This is the insidious nature of comfort. Comfort is so tempting all the time. And comfort isn't just like lazy boy chair. Comfort is low executive functioning, not wanting to think about that thing. And I find that I often make the very unprofitable decision, the unprofitable bet, because I'd rather have it conveniently than to go through the hard choice. And we can become just like those business owners who wonder why they go to business quickly. It's because they lose the plot. They take their eye off of the main thing. And the main thing is to prioritize a profitable return on your life. Let's call it what it is. It's actually just uncomfortable. And if you actually embrace the process, you hug the cactus, the discomforting path is where you find the most life. Unbelievably proven, ironclad, uncommonly practiced, just because it's a little uncomfortable. I get it, but I'm never going back. As humans, we prefer the path of least resistance. We crave convenience, the payoff without the price. But when our lives revolve around comfort, it doesn't deliver. Living in perpetual comfort leaves us weak and asleep. This podcast is an invitation to flip that script, to choose the unlikely path, to get the life you really want through voluntary discomfort. This is Strong and Awake. I'm Dane Sanders. Mitch, I'm curious, do you know any business on the planet who is concerned about anything besides profit? At least a successful business?
Yeah, I was going to say a success. That's an important qualifier because I do know some that have been in the past that are no more. But no.
What were they were focused on? What were they focused on? Focused on the ones that were failing.
Oh, other metrics.
Yeah. Like revenue or let's just make a bunch of money, but who cares how much we spend? Or let's just, whatever their thing is.
Acquisition. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Or looking, that's funny. I know what you're talking about. I think. But I can relate to that too. I've been around organizations that have great intentions, but they lose the plot on the single metric that matters most, which is profit. And of course, profit in business terms, for those of you who are listening and aren't business people, it's pretty straightforward. Talk to any accountant. Profit is simply revenue minus expenses equals profit. It's not the money you make, it's the money you keep. It's the stuff that sticks around. And we today are going to talk about profit as a metaphor, profit as an anchor, actually, that we would have a bias and over-indexing in the direction of prioritizing profit. And I know right away, right out of the gate, I've already alienated ourselves because there's people who are like, down with consumption and it's not
capitalism.
Capitalism. And I have my kids are all, progressive and they know, and they tell me, but hang with me just for a second. It's just a metaphor. The point is simply, you want to focus on the right metric, and the metric in the MWOD world that we have found to be incredibly resourceful is what sticks with you, what keeps, not the excitement on the front end, not the dark valley burdens where it's difficult. Think of that as like revenue minus expenses. But it's at the end of that exercise, you're really fixated on the profit you seek, and not just in a narrow band like business, but we want to invite people to prioritize profit for their life. What's the return on investment? And again, the return on investment is the nature of what profit is, right? You spend money, you hopefully make money, and the net result is you have a profit. We want the same kind of ROI metric or vision in people's minds of every choice I make needs to have a bias towards prioritizing profit, where the result we're getting at the end of it, the stuff we keep, is the point. And friends, I can't overstate how crazy we can become, just like those business owners who go in mad directions and wonder why they go to business quickly. It's because they lose the plot. They take their eye off of the main thing. And the main thing is to prioritize a profitable return on your life.
You start with kind of that end in mind, which is so important because a lot of times not only can we be focused on the wrong metrics, but our kind of time horizons can also be too short-sighted. You can see this all the time in business, obviously, that we're talking about, but other folks too, and other avenues of life, they might be focused on maybe the right thing, but not giving it enough time. So they're
That's right.
always pivoting, changing for the novelty or trying something new. Or they're just focused on the wrong thing altogether.
Yeah.
So like, what are some of those signs that we might be focused either on the wrong thing or thinking kind of on that wrong timeline?
Yeah, let's be methodical with this, because there are so many pitfalls that you can get into, and we'll try to give as many examples as we can for folks. But sticking with the metaphor, you think of a business and they have some early success, right? They're making money. And what do? They get overextended on spending money. They kind of get drunk on revenue, and they're so excited they go out beyond their skis. The classic kind of example of this is when people expand too quickly. And they end up going like they have one successful store, let's open up 7 more. And they underestimate, they think every store is going to be this breakout hit. That's what they plan for. And then they have some little trouble. They get, something goes in the remodel or construction goes wrong, or they get something from the city, or they get flooded, or, and all of a sudden they get way behind in the expenses, and they're like, oh my gosh, the profitable store is now paying for the unprofitable store, and we're really in trouble. Mm. And I think that is one good place to start as a pitfall, because what I have seen happen, especially when people, let's say they're coming into Men and Women of Discomfort, and they've been an athlete, or they've had success from discipline in the past. They know what it's like. And they show up to day one. They're so enthusiastic. They've cleaned out their pantry. They've gotten ready. They got their water bottle, and they're all excited, and they're going to get after it. And they try to get in shape in one workout, and they get hurt. Or like they think that they've equated intensity with success, and we don't, or perfection. They need to like lift like they used to. And we don't think in those terms at all, because we don't have to, because we have a long enough time horizon. We're actually thinking about the rest of your life, not just a sprint. We have an opportunity to actually set a foundation with great form, where your intensity in the front end of a MWOD is actually, we hope you choose a low intensity, because your endurance will improve over time. Endurance, of course, by definition, is patient suffering. Your patient suffering will improve over time, and you will very naturally ratchet up if you don't miss a day. What's way more important is that you don't miss a day. But what normally happens, and we see this all the time, people who, maybe not at MWOD, but I see it in kind of the public culture, where people go and they work out. They had this great workout, and it was really incredible, and they reward themselves by going and getting some ridiculous drink at Starbucks, or like an extra, pastry, or whatever, and or a cocktail that night, celebrating their good fortune, and they just spent all of their gains. Yep. But they have nothing left in a profit category. All they had revenue, they had too many expenses, and they're left at the exact same place, or worse than they did at the beginning. One of the reasons why MWOD, we spend so much energy in the kitchen as much as we do in the workout room, is because if you do that, you're setting yourself up to lose weight, if that's your interest, lose weight in the kitchen, and then buffet your body in the workout room. But what often happens is people think they're going to get in shape in the workout room, and then they get more hungry because they burnt all those calories. And then they show up in the kitchen and they overeat. And then when they overeat, they set themselves further back. They get discouraged, they get in a spiral, and they quit. And this is, every New Year's resolution by January 21st. This is what happens. So predictable. But when you look at it from a profit lens, you go, oh, well, wait, before I even get started, I'm actually going to show up in the workout room with a minimal viable practice that I can set a foundation with and grow with over time, week in, week out, just a little bit of improvement, just a little bit. Don't miss a day. Be that person. And in the kitchen, I'm going to narrow, before we talk about what you're going to eat, we're going to talk about when you're going to eat. Let's just narrow the band of when. And within that band, let's make really good choices. And that is part of the discipline. It's part of your practice. You combine just those two things amongst several other things, several other voluntary discomforts, and you are maximizing profit. The return on your life is significant. And that's really, in many ways, the impetus for how we make the decisions that we make in terms of how we keep modifying and creating MWOD in new ways. But you don't even need MWOD to do this. Anyone at home right now could take this exact model and go, if I'm going to prioritize profit, I can avoid some of these pitfalls of thinking that revenue is the only part of the equation. Or another pitfall is expense is the only part of the equation. How can I pull way, way back and not invest in myself, not invest in my gym membership, or be involved in a community where it costs money to get in the door? Or we have people do DEXA scans at the front end of every round. And a DEXA scan, if you don't know, measures really way beyond a brute metric like weight. We get to measure body fat, lean muscle mass, how your fat is distributed, visceral fat, bone density. It's kind of like an internal X-ray of reality. And if that's your benchmark, as you make progress, you get to see more accurately really helpful data of the profit you're making. But there's always resistance to like, oh, I don't know if I want to spend the money to go get a DEXA scan to find out where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And it's ridiculous. It's like if you break your leg, you don't overthink getting an X-ray. If you're nervous about getting cancer, you don't avoid paying to get blood work done. Like this is just fundamental things of taking care of the one body that we have access to, but to do it in a profitable way, not over-indexing on revenue, not over-indexing on expense, fixating on return on your life.
Yeah. And I think honestly, for most people, I don't know, I was in this camp, even to get started, I could use that like, well, I don't have time to get a DEXA scan. I don't have the money. Like chances are there's a number of things that you can do that will move yourself towards this category that are very obvious, like low hanging fruit.
Yes.
That you don't even need those kind of metrics to even dig into.
What were those for you? Like in the front end, when you think about that, how did you prioritize profit with the low hanging fruit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, it was apparent to me. You could see it physically, looking at photos of myself or how I felt. Like I could just tell that I was lethargic. I was not in very good shape, and not even just like, in fighting shape. Like I was just like not just in good living shape.
Yeah.
Like, I was kind of dragging, kind of tired all the time. And I could tell like my output for work, my presence for my family was suffering. And even just like my clarity of thought wasn't there. And that became more and more apparent as I changed and corrected. But that was one of the things that I first looked at. So like going kind of, one of the things that we like to do is like go kind of upstream or higher order. Like, well, what's behind that?
Yeah.
Or what's something that you can do in the theme of kind of fueling first, like we had talked about. So just kind of starting by, okay, I'm just going to get better sleep. That'll help me wake up earlier, have more energy, be more present, bring myself more to my exercise, or have greater discipline in the kitchen. So, those are some of the things for me. But I use that for so many years, that excuse of I don't have the time. And you were saying, one of the things that we get to do is invest in ourselves, and we're often kind of resistant to that. And I think one of the ways, one of the subversive ways that we often kind of don't invest in ourselves is by not kind of giving up on or acknowledging opportunity cost. We've overloaded our schedules, maybe for distraction, maybe because we feel it's out of necessity, out of scarcity, that we don't even have this margin created, or don't feel like we have this margin to take the extra half an hour to start moving, to, spend 15 minutes to just make something fresh in the kitchen versus, going through that drive-through again. So I think there's a number of ways that we can kind of prioritize profit, looking at both the expenses and also the return in some pretty obvious ways to get started.
Yeah. It's so helpful to take pause and realize like it's kind of everywhere. So whenever I have a decision, and we've talked about decisions in the past, like they're basically, Andy Duke helps us think through that as bets that we're making. And we want to make good bets. And that's, whenever you're going to try to go for profit, you're making a bet. You're saying this is going to give me a greater likelihood of success meaning profit. And I'm going to do that by deciding to do X instead of Y. So my wife and I made a decision recently that was really expensive, a really expensive decision. And you know about it because we talked about it offline. Do you think that would be an appropriate thing to bring up?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, We have 4 kids. We love our kids, and we have 2 all the way through college, and a third about to be done. Praise the Lord, and a 4th who's just getting started. But we've invested a lot of money in their, but that's not actually true. What we've actually done is we've invested a lot of our credit and took out significant loans to have our kids be able to go through university and college. And we recently sold a home, and we had a down payment that we were going to go and try and buy a new home and where we live now. And we came to the very uncomfortable decision of, instead of being in a position where we could buy a home right now, we gutted our savings and spent all of it, not all of it, a big chunk of it, removing that 6-figure debt from the ledger. And it might sound like, well, what does that have to do with what we're talking about, prioritizing profit? Well, let's think about that for a second. So we had a big chunk of change in an account making 4% interest. And we also had a big chunk of debt in an account that we were getting charged between 6 and 8% interest. And you do the math on that, and we just by taking money out of one account, paying off a different account, we got a return, a profit that was 4%, and now it's between 6 and 8. No brainer, right? Like, who doesn't want to upgrade your return on investment? But then the reality, you're staring at a 6-figure amount that's going to become a 5-figure amount in an account. And it's painful to go, I think this is what I have, my revenue. And I don't want to pay attention to the expense, debt that is accumulating every single day. It's not being paid. And it's painful to go, oh, I'm going to go do that hard thing. And we did it. But we labored up right to the second, didn't want to hit the button, finally did it. But once we did it, it was like, whew, like profit, instant profit, like guarantee. If you guys don't believe me, and even if you don't like Dave Ramsey, go listen to the Dave Ramsey radio show for 5 minutes and hear the stories of people over and over again having this deep sense of like, oh, I made the profitable decision, even though it was the hard decision. So it could be something grand like that, but it also could be very just, I love your example of food. Just before we jumped on here, I was downstairs, opening the fridge, going, what am I going to make? And I thought, what I really want to do is just, even though it's pretty clean food, I was going to order Chipotle and go pick it up. But then I thought, I just paid off all that debt. And I have eggs right here, and I have meat right here. And why don't I just make Chipotle? And I did. Took me 7 minutes, 8 minutes, probably less time than it would have taken me to press the buttons and go pick it up and come back. Even if it was DoorDash, it probably didn't
definitely.
time. And about a fifth the price, maybe eighth the price, something like that.
Yeah, probably. I mean, 100th if you've got guac.
Well, in your house, you have like nothing but guac with your orchards. But the point is simply like, prioritize profit. What's the better return? And this is where this is the insidious nature of comfort. Comfort is so tempting all the time. And comfort isn't just like lazy boy chair. Comfort is convenience. Comfort is ease. Comfort is low executive functioning. Comfort is not wanting to think about that thing, just wanting to get it out of your focal point. And I find that my desire to have that quick, easy fix, that is comfort. I want that so badly. I often make the very unprofitable decision, the unprofitable bet, just because I'd rather have it conveniently than to go through the hard choice. And I think those little things, like, the big bill question is one thing. It's real. And I know people are listening who are going like, oh, wait, I could go do something like that. And you should, if you can. But more often happens are these very little itsy bitsy things that I'm often asleep to. But if I would just wake myself up, stay attuned to the moment I'm in, stand now, which we'll talk about in a future show. We have a chance to make a move. And it's what I'm always shocked by is when I make those harder choices early, these seemingly inconvenient choices early, where I pay up front rather than put it on payment plans kind of idea, metaphorically, it's always an instant return and almost always cheaper. It costs me less, not just money, but like time, energy, resources. If you actually measure it, like the energy output or the time it takes, it's a very short window of discomfort to get to this return. And it's available to us every morning we wake up. No, every night before you go to bed, every morning you wake up, right in the middle of the morning, at lunch, when you're working with somebody, a customer or a colleague or a boss that's wigging you out and you need a better perspective. You can just, hey, instead of saying that thing that you want to say, you can hit pause, say, hey, can I use the restroom real quick? Go to the restroom, get a hold of yourself, come back to the conversation, say the thing, like ask for forgiveness, take the humble road. These are investments in our future that you can actually get a return on. And the few people who do that, they are rich indeed, rich at a level that most people underappreciate. And and this is where it's so shocking, is I know people who are incredibly rich in their profit category in business, yet they don't make the contextual leap to the other areas of their life because they're radically poor with their health. They're radically poor in their relationships. They're lonely in ways. They don't have grit. They don't stand up when it gets difficult. And you can make the same prioritizing of profit choices in every one of those categories. If only you would have those categories to be thinking in, that you want to be prioritizing profit everywhere all the time.
Yeah, and this ties directly into traveling light too, which we just talked about. You brought up Dave Ramsey, but you watch any of these shows that are like, they come in and rescue a failing restaurant or something like that. One of the first things that they do is like simplify the menu. Like, let's reduce optionality here. Not only is that cognitive challenges for the people ordering, etc., but for you got to stock those items. You got to manage these things. You got to make sure that your cooks and prep know how to do all these things. And I think that's one of the things that we often get trapped in. And as we kind of transition to kind of like auditing our time and our energy investments, like that's one of the things that seems hard. It's hard to give up that optionality. It's hard to give up that liquidity like you did by paying off that debt. But oftentimes kind of reducing that optionality, simplifying the situation, kind of getting down to the essentials is often a great first step. It's not necessarily easy. It can come with some upfront costs or upfront challenge.
Well, upfront discomfort.
Exactly.
Like let's call it what it is. It's actually just uncomfortable. That's all it is. If you have money and you spend money, what is that? Like you're just handing a card over, you're pressing a button, or like there's actually no one's like taking my liver. No one's like chopping off my right arm. It's a transaction, but there's this attachment to the transaction, to the thing that seems like hard. Well, what is hard? What is that? It's primarily between our ears, primarily. Now, if you're in the middle of a CrossFit workout and you got a Metcon, like this morning, I did this 10 through 1 deadlift where I had to run 200 meters in between each one. And I was tired, man. Like that was hard, physically hard. But most of even that hard was hanging on to the bar just a little longer and not trying to going unbroken. Like I didn't get hurt. It was just effortful. And I think that's this notion of it's hard. Well, are we humans? Like everything is mentally hard. We're always pushing rocks up hills. And why not get, if it's going to be hard anyways, why not get comfortable being uncomfortable? Because it's always the profitable path. It's always the means by which we get what we're really looking for.
And I think that's a great transition to kind of what does it look like to kind of cultivate this practice? Because, a practice in essence is this kind of immovable object, this thing that you do like in moment to moment, day to day, that anchors you, that kind of informs a lot of these other decisions that you're making and helps kind of anchor you and see that telos, that end of the path that might be on the other side of this immediate discomfort. So how do we begin to cultivate that practice and even kind of audit our time and energy in this moment to prioritize that practice?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the word audit is super resourceful here. In fact, one thing that I've never thought of before this conversation, I took a note of earlier, that I think could be a nice kind of 1-2 combo here is, first of all, to start with, consider the categories in your life. And one easy way to think about it is like, consider and you can do this with all the anchors, by the way, but prioritizing profit in particular, you could think of like, or maybe I think travel light or fuel, I guess they all work, but let's stick with prioritize profit. Think of like your friends. Who are the friends that are in your life that you walk away from those relationships having more than you showed up with? That's profit. And who are the ones that you walk away from and you're depleted? That's not profit. And it could be that it's the way you're contributing to that relationship. That could be a way to get a profit, right? Or it could be that it's a toxic relationship. Like, there's a lot up for grabs here to navigate what the hard choices are, the good choices. And I think there's gold here. But that's just one category. What about family? And family is a kind of friend that you can't get rid of. They're going to be with you forever. Even if you set a boundary and they're not in your physical presence all the time, you're carrying them with you everywhere you go. And you know, we just know statistically, there's a lot of people listening who have an issue with, if I say the word your dad, you're going to have something to think or feel about it, right? Something pops for you. Your mom, whatever it is, your brother, sister, you know, whatever your thing is. And just know, if they're going to be in your head and heart anyways, how could you have a profitable relationship with them? How could you increase the revenue and decrease the cost and reinvent that relationship? But let's go further. What about your money? You know, we talked about that extensively with specific examples of, if indeed more money, more problems. Well, how could you get rid of your money expense in a way that yields profit, which is more than revenue? It's something profound. It's not just kept revenue. It's actually a means by which you can have a different kind of existence. What are you going to do with that kept revenue? How are you going to invest it in others? How are you going to invest it in things that are most important? So we had friends, family, finances. Again, this is an audit, right? You could think about your habits. Audit your habit. Are your habits actually yielding what you want, or taking more? Is a giver or a taker? I have a few more that I want to add, but what occurs to you, Mitch, as categories of an audit that you would think about?
Well, first, I think it shouldn't go kind of unstated or acknowledge that audits, a lot of times we hear that word, it's like something that's done to us or forced on us.
Right.
But we have the ability, like, to actually exercise that agency and do these things before we get to the point where we have to do this.
That's right.
You know, because auditing is really a get to. And if we're doing a good job prioritizing profit or starting to move in that direction, I think it makes sense that the first step would be auditing, because
what's current reality?
That's usually the thing that got us in this place, is not having that margin, not actually looking at what I'm doing and spending time and holding space to do that, or having a community of folks that you can, you know, bounce that off of, or have people speak into your life in a way that is challenging maybe at times. So for me, you know, when I think about auditing, it sounds obvious, but to a lot of us in practice, that's not actually what we're doing, or we haven't actually prioritized that very first step to even being awake to our current reality. So,
well, it's funny you say that. Like, one of the aha that I had even in this conversation was it could be really interesting to take an audit, and let's say it's like budgeting. Like, budgeting is kind of like, well, what are we currently spending? Well, how much money do we get in? Is this the right allocation? Are we overspending? Are these the right things we want to invest in? A lot of people, myself included, resist budgeting. Budgeting is just like, I don't really understand it. I'm not an accountant. Every time I've tried, I failed. Whatever story you've made up about that for yourself, great. There's a lot of tools and people out there that can help you with these things. But regardless, if you find yourself in that kind of a place where you're just kind of overwhelmed, what that's telling you is it's a chore. It's like you should do it, right? I need to have a budget, right? You don't need to because you don't have one right now, and somehow here you are. So what if you could take the anchors that we talk about and apply them to the audit directly? So what if your budgeting wasn't a have to, it was a get to? What if you were to choose your role relative to the budget? Are you going to be a victim to your budget? Or are you going to be a hero with your budget? Or might you even ask for a guide to help you with your budget? What if you were to fuel first? What if you were to actually figure out the things that are most important only, draw the line, and that's what gets paid first before anything else gets paid? What if you were to travel light? Actually go through and say, do I need 75 monthly subscriptions? Maybe not.
Ooh, that one cuts deep.
But that's, you're traveling lighter, right? Mm-hmm. And when we do it, what do we do? It's just this feeling of like, it's like what I had last night. Just, whew, where did that weight go? Gone. And all I'm doing is applying the anchor to the audit. That's all we're doing. Get to, choose your role, fuel first, travel light, prioritize profit. That's the exercise. And you can do the same with the other ones we'll be talking about in future days. But friends, don't miss on this opportunity. And probably the last thing I'd say is like, don't arrogantly try to do it on your own. Like, be the courageous one who's willing to talk out loud about it. It's kind of embarrassing to me to tell people that I have a 6-figure student loan. Like it can feel a little noble because I'm, took out loans to invest in my kids. But the truth is, before that, I just bought consumer products and owned cars I couldn't afford. And before that, I would just do the convenient thing. I just head in sand. It just felt better. La, la, la. Don't tell me what's going on. And I had a weird relationship with consumption. And after a lot of slow and steady work to be on this day, this is day one for me. I cannot believe how profitable and worth it is. But it means facing with vulnerability and a bit of courage, like, what's real? What is actually happening right now? What is the current reality am I in? Can I at least have the courage to say, this is happening. This is today. Got it. I might have used to be an athlete, today not so much. And then I could look forward and go, well, if I could wave a magic wand, what would I be? What's my preferred future? How would I rearrange it? I would be debt free. I would be 12% body fat. I would be best shape of my life at 54. I would be, fill in the blank, have friends like Mitch in my life, who put up with me and my journey, and want to hang out all the time. Like, it's just kind of amazing to me. And, you set those 2 plot points of where you're at and where you want to go. And you just have a bias towards making the profitable decision, the inconvenient, uncomfortable decision. It's just an inevitability at that point. You will become that person. It's just a time horizon. And whether it takes you 10 years or 2 years, who cares? If you're on it, it's as good as done. And if you actually embrace the process, you hug the cactus that we're describing, friends, the profitable path, the discomforting path is where you find the most life. One of the reasons why Mitch is one of my best friends is because we suffer together. Mm-hmm. And anyone I suffer with are my best friends. Always. Go to a CrossFit gym. Who do you want to hug at the end of a sweaty workout? Well, the one who sweated next to you, regardless of who they are. It's kind of amazing. And I guess that's I think this is life. This is like the good life. And it's so unlikely that this would be the path. Everyone would like to say they have a big profit in their life, that they're rich, but the becoming rich, this is the path. Unbelievably proven, ironclad, uncommonly practiced, just because it's a little uncomfortable. I get it, but I'm never going back.
Mm-hmm. And it's a decision that you make daily.
Every day.
Yeah. You didn't decide this once upon a time, and now you're just, okay, the decision's made. I get to enjoy all the profit.
Set it and forget it.
It's a daily discipline, moment by moment.
Yeah. I kind of want to go buy an Airstream or a van, right? Like I want to do that. Right? I can do it right now. It's like, no, don't be drunk again. Don't do those silly things. They're not where you're needed. That's not profitable. There could be a day where that's profitable, but that's not what today is. And that's the gift. Mm-hmm. Prioritize profit, friends. Prioritize profit as best you can. And then look at it again and keep correcting course, keep tweaking in the direction of the promised land, of what you're actually wanting.
Well, I encourage everyone, as your kind of anchor action, go start that audit. Carve out that time. Just put it in the calendar. Go back and listen to the previous episodes if you need a refresher on the last ones. And stay tuned because, you better believe that these all integrate together and will kind of help enrich a lot of the things that you've already heard in future episodes. So tune in. And Dane, do you have an invitation for this community where they can potentially get a guide or join along others?
I'm so glad that you said that. Well, obviously, go to MWOD.io/apply. Join us. It's an amazing community. But I want to actually give a shout out to a guide in my life who I know is listening. He listens to the podcast regularly. We talk about it on the side. He's my pastor. His name is Mark Page, and he's a MWOD alum. And I can't overstate how his own modeling, his own living into the things that we're describing led to this moment that happened for me last night. And I don't often do shout outs, but I really wanted to acknowledge that really cool reality in my life that I'm so grateful for. And just I can't imagine doing this work alone. Whether it's Mark in my life or Mitch in my life or the MWOD community, doing it's just too heavy of a lift. Life is just, I think, a little too hard for a solo act. Give yourself the gift of community. Find it somewhere. Fight for it. You're worth that fight. And if you're resisting it for whatever reason, even the money thing, like if MWOD's too expensive, just send me a freaking text or email or something. Like, let us know. We'll work with you. But what matters is that you find the community and you get after it. And that you're to be true to the theme of today's conversation, you're willing to put some skin in the game to get the return you're looking for. And if you do that consistently and increasingly everywhere you can imagine, you will find tremendous, tremendous satisfaction. Men and Women of Discomfort is our membership community, and we are open to everyone. But keep in mind, our tagline is, "It's probably not for you." If we're wrong about that, or if you want to find out for yourself, you can find us at MWOD.io.